welcome to
Useful Idiots. Jinx.
I was doing that for dramatic effect, but
right.
I think Matt thought maybe I forgot, which is not
unusual.
I wasn't gonna say unusual, but thank you for that vote of confidence. I was gonna say not impossible thing, but I'm not offended by that because we often do the This Week in Matt rapidly aging MRA.
Right. Yes.
So it's fair that I should.
Although I've already forgotten that we do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is like 50 First Dates, the show. Do you remember that movie?
No.
Oh, okay. You probably do. You probably have seen it 10 times.
I've probably seen it 10 times. Yeah.
It's with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. And she has a condition where every day she wakes up, she forgets everything about her life. I'm not sure how it works, but every day she wakes up, it's a blank slate of a memory. And it's really hard to date in that context, but they somehow try it. I'm not going to give away the ending, but they maybe make it work, maybe don't make it work.
I see. Yeah, because how do you remember? Like, you got to really speed up the process, I guess.
Well, and you have to be like, hey, I'm not a weirdo. We're actually dating.
Right.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I'm not. Do not try this as some kind of prank, everyone. Not.
They explored that same theme in the Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
But he just sort of used all the knowledge that he got to kind of, sort of amp up the process.
Yeah, but this is almost the opposite because his is like he's trapped and he remembers everything, right? That's the
he
whole
does,
thing.
But everybody else doesn't.
Yeah, so this is the opposite. It's like this one woman doesn't remember, but the rest of the world does.
Right.
Definitely do some.
From the man's point of view, it's the same problem because she
look at that. I just totally identified with I was identifying with the female character.
Right.
But the man is part of the world that's like I don't want to say normal. It's really problematic. But I'll say the man is part of the world that.
Are there any words that we can use anymore that we have to think about first?
No, but that was tongue in cheek because I don't want to be temporally normative. The whole 24. Like I don't want to.
Is normative also problematic?
Thank you. I was waiting for woke button. We haven't done the woke button in a while. We need to have an episode that's nonstop woke button.
Yeah, we'd just be holding it down at this point. It's not a joke anymore.
Right. It's not a gag anymore. Yeah.
It's just a thing. So you're in a celebratory mood today because the Milwaukee Elk yesterday took the championship, and I saw on Twitter you were happy about that.
Well, what I was confused by is why on this day of great NBA playing, why people were using their Twitter to talk about Giannis Varoufakis. Why do they need to dedicate their Twitter to talking about how powerful and the physique of a Greek?
You never knew he was 7 feet tall, right?
Oh, that's who the person is? Oh, I thought they were just Oh, I get it. Okay, so coming full circle, I see. So that is, what I realized? I misspelled. You see, you're the 7-footer spelled with the G, right?
Yes, Giannis, yeah.
Yeah, and then my Giannis is spelled with a Y. But the thing is, my Greek is so good that
you were going by the Grecian alphabet.
Yes, yeah. Right. So for me, when I see the Y and the G, it's like this isn't my language.
Right.
I'm like. Ohi.
You were already transliterating.
Exactly, yeah. So then I realized that, but what's really funny is I tweeted out something. It was like, why is everyone objectifying a Greek economist or something? And I was like, it wasn't the most well executed tweet. And I was like, it's Giannis this, Giannis this, Giannis that. He's a theorist, who cares? And people were like, because he's hot. But people do have a real crush on Giannis Varoufakis.
The economist?
Yeah, in fact, we got to get him on the show.
Really?
Giannis, we could help you become.
This is the basic divide of the show because I'm pretty sure I'd rather have the other Giannis on.
Well, don't tell Giannis Varoufakis, but I would rather have. Let's have both. Let's have a Giannis on Giannis episode.
Like Giannis on Giannis. Like, what do you mean Giannis on Giannis?
Well, they both have to be on the show together, and
I get it. You just mean they would be on together, like
like an athletic. That would be funny. First, they have an athletic competition, then they have like an economic theory competition.
I was thinking of it being more like a sort of a Pornhub type of thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you want to arrange
on Giannis content, I don't think I'd be interested in that.
Giannis and Giannis content. That's a whole. Is that a genre I don't know about?
Well, no,
it should be.
It should be.
I mean, if we lived in a just world where people cared about economics,
I bet it's out there somewhere, right? I bet somewhere there is a Giannis on Giannis porn video.
Yeah.
Out there.
Well, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
if it's not out there yet, it'll probably be out there by the time this episode.
We don't want to encourage that, but what we would encourage would be a cute little mashup of them. I don't know, somehow showing them scoring baskets and then making good points. That could be cool, right?
Right, baskets and points. Yeah.
Oh, points and points, counterpoints.
Right.
Shots. Right, we could have Giannis taking a real shot at I don't know, neoliberalism, and then the other Giannis dunking. Does he dunk?
Your Giannis or mine?
Yours. They're both our Giannis's.
Right.
Today.
Yeah. The taller one does actually dunk. Yes.
That's what I meant. Does he do that thing? Do you think we could get him on? Your Giannis?
He's probably busy. I would guess at the moment.
Well, I saw a video of him where he was saying how Kobe Bryant believing in him made him feel like he had to play. Seems like, honestly, actually, it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but seriously, he seems like a pretty nice, humble guy.
He is a nice, humble guy. He was only drafted 16th, I think, so he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Oh,
he was overlooked. He wasn't like a guaranteed star from birth, like a lot of these guys.
Right, but we believe in him.
We do.
And we would feel kind of disappointed, Giannis, if you could give me a minute, talking straight to the camera. We believe in you. You weren't 16 to us. You were 15 or 14.
Right.
So we want you to come on.
It was Kelly Olynyk, I think, but that's a whole separate discussion.
Don't get me started, Kelly.
Yeah, exactly.
I get really upset about that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we've extended invitations to both Giannis's.
Yeah, both Giannis's.
The tall one, the short one.
Short.
Yeah, I mean, there's other
Joe Rogan, but you're not co-signing that.
Yeah, I'm not co-signing that. All right, so we got to power through the four food groups because we have a lot to get to this week. So starting with Democrats suck. Look, there was a lot to choose from, and this is actually not. I guess the best way to say it is not a completely new story, but it's become a controversy that's kind of been drawn out. There's lots of different things about this story that are kind of annoying, so I just sort of wanted to generally talk about them. But the first thing is, last week this story came out in Politico. Is potentially a death sentence. White House goes off on vaccine fearmongers. There was a very curious passage in this piece that Politico was reporting that read as follows: Biden-allied groups, including the Democratic National Committee, are also planning to engage fact checkers more aggressively and will work with SMS carriers to dispel misinformation about vaccines that is sent over social media and text messages. The goal is to ensure that people who may have difficulty getting a vaccination because of issues like transportation see those barriers lessened or removed entirely. Now that's a really weird thing to say, because so Biden-allied groups, and they're saying that the Democratic National Committee, who's standing to do any of this, is very dubious to me, but whatever. Apparently, according to Politico, they're working with SMS carriers to identify misinformation. And as you can see from that last sentence, the goal is to see people who may have difficulty getting a vaccination to have barriers lessened or removed entirely. So those people who might see misinformation, we want to potentially remove entirely that disinformation, right? After this, there was a whole brouhaha because a lot of people interpreted this as what it sounds like, which is Biden-allied groups. And remember, they're quoting in this story. They're quoting a White House spokesperson right after this. The story is clearly sourced to a bunch of White House people. A lot of people interpreted this as the White House is going to get involved with fact-checking text messages. And then there was immediately a backlash. to this. If we can see Matt PolitiFact does a fact check on this, where it says it's completely false that the government will be infiltrating personal text messages. They end up citing a statement from the DNC. So they asked the White House to comment on this. The White House blows off the response, refers PolitiFact to the DNC. The DNC told PolitiFact that it has no ability to access or read people's private text messages, and we're not working with any government agency, including the White House, to try to see personal text messages. Well, that's obvious. Nobody claimed they were, right? I mean, and then it says, however, when the DNC's counter disinformation program receives complaints or reports of fraudulent broadcast SMSs that we believe violate the text aggregator's terms of service, we notify the broadcast text platform. So that sounds like the DNC is actually identifying text messages that it would like to see no longer broadcast, right? And so PolitiFact then goes to CTIA, which is a trade group representing wireless communications carriers. And they say in a statement, wireless carriers do not read or moderate the content of text messages that their customers send to each other, nor are carriers working with third parties to do so. There's a whole merry-go-round of statements and cross statements. This all started when the Biden administration, when Biden himself said this thing about how they were going to send people door to door to try to argue in favor of vaccination. Yeah, this is what Biden says in his speech. Now we need to go community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and oftentimes door to door, literally knocking on doors to get help to the remaining people protected from the virus. Then later on, the Biden administration ultimately says, well, we're not going door to door. It's interested actors that are going to be going door to door, not us. So somebody's not telling the truth here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, obviously the Republicans completely overreacted to this whole story by, claiming that the government was going to go door to door and take your Bibles and your guns and forcibly vaccinate you and all these other things. And then, personally monitor your text messages. But they clearly, the political story clearly was about, we're going to start trying to get involved with text messages too. And then they kind of walked it all back, which has become kind of part of the pattern of all these things. I mean, this came right at the same time they were making their announcement about how we're working with Facebook. And I think what's happening here is that they're basically trying to sort of lawyer their way through telling people about something new that they're going to do with social media posts and text messages. With Facebook, technically, it still won't be the government making the deletions or flagging posts or doing whatever it is.
Right.
Technically, here it wouldn't be the government looking through the text messages either. I don't know. The whole thing is suspicious to me. So I just thought it would be worth talking about.
Yeah. I mean, so is the idea that they're kind of going to like farm it out and have a middleman?
Well, the way it originally read is the DNC was going to compile a list of text messages that they found obnoxious, including the idea that the Biden administration was going to go door to door and sort of scare people into getting a vaccine or doing or that they're going to be infiltrating their text messages. And the idea was that these SMS carriers would then hopefully remove those messages. But then the carriers themselves say, well, we're not reading text messages and we're not blocking any. So
what do you think the key wording loophole is? Like, what's the thing that stands out for you?
Look, it's out when the DNC says, well, we don't have any ability to read text messages. Well, obviously you're not an SMS carrier, and we're not working with any government agency to do this. Well, that's just as obvious. The allegation is that you're working with the private carriers who can read the messages. Yeah. So it's just a lot of wordsmithing. The Biden administration talks about going door to door. Apparently, it's not them going door to door, although that's how the New York Times reported it. Like, this is how that story actually read when he first said it back on July 6th. Faced with a steep decline in vaccination rates, President Biden said on Tuesday that his administration would send people door to door set up clinics at workplaces and urge employers to offer paid time off as part of a renewed push to reach tens of billions of unvaccinated Americans. And some of those things are good, but it's this constant theme about getting involved with people talking to each other about this issue that makes me really, really nervous. You know, on the text message level, that's like particularly crazy, because yes, the parties do these mass text messages, which can be obnoxious or you know, or incorrect, but we want, you know, the DNC involved in making lists of things that end up getting stricken. I don't know.
No, I'm going to say no.
Because they could do it to the Sanders campaign or Nina Turner or whoever, right? You know,
right. I mean, I wonder what any predictions that you have about how people are going to respond to this. It's
funny because this goes hand in hand with the whole Facebook thing, and the response to that has been really, really strange. I mean, it mostly hasn't been covered. There's been some debate about it, but not a whole lot. You know, the ACLU didn't comment on it, which was kind of amazing.
Yeah, why?
You know, and at least initially, I haven't seen in the last 24 hours or so. Maybe they have, but
now that we brought it up and we're challenging them, this is our ACLU challenge of the week. We should probably start doing that, Matt. We really should. We should be like, what should it be? Like the Bell of Freedom segment. We you know, we're like urging liberal, freedom-loving orgs.
Yeah, we should get little replica Liberty Bells.
Yeah, Liberty Bell. Yeah, and Liberty Bell of the week.
Ding them. Yeah. Do a sort of corny like Mr. Rogers style thing.
Yeah, but also on a horse, like Paul Revere style.
Right.
So we need a graphic of one of us on a horse, because he didn't ding a bell, right?
He carried a lantern and he yelled.
Okay, we need a graphic of me yell on a horse carrying a lantern and yelling. And then Matt has to just be dinging. Matt needs to be riding an eagle with the bell.
Oh, that'd be good.
Oh no, it's the Liberty Bell is not mobile actually. So Matt needs to
big and steel-like
on the bell.
Yeah, sitting on it.
Like sitting on it, yeah.
Astride.
Yeah, that would be really fun. Can you reach it though, if in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you just give me a little sort of curved, like a tongue type thing, I can probably get it going. But the problem is, but my weight might prevent it from vibrating sufficiently. So
I don't think it's true. But if it does, what a good motivation, because this whole thing won't work. Because we were saying a graphic, but we're actually going to film this. We're going to have some things below to catch him if, God forbid, Matt.
Yeah, that would be a bad way to die.
Can you imagine you telling your family that you were going to do this? Do you think your wife would let you? Like, would there be kind of relief in it?
If I went to my wife and I said there was like a 1 in 10,000 chance that I would die falling off a Liberty Bell for a joke that, you know, is maybe not all that funny to begin with, how would she respond?
Would she laugh?
I don't know. Probably not. I think she would probably just not answer.
Right.
Yeah.
What if it was really funny though?
Which would be my cue to not do it, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
What if it were really funny? What if you let her create the comedy aspect? Would it maybe be worth it?
I don't think she would want to invest any energy in any of that. So, anyway, that happened. This is part of this sort of larger thing about sort of policing the internet, and they were as we talked about on Monday morning, the messaging on this is getting super intense. You know, Facebook is killing people, and so we obviously have to get in and commandeer it. You know,
right?
So who knows where all this is going, but I thought that was an interesting thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to do this so that we can put this in later.
Right. Yeah. We'll
freedom,
paint it in.
Yeah, paint it in, guys. Guys, you got to get on this. ACLU, you got to get on this.
All right. What do we have for Republicans?
So Republicans suck. An interesting story, not very surprising, but Republicans call for criminal tribunal for human rights abuses in Cuba. A group of more than 140 lawmakers is calling on the U.S. governments of Central and South America and European Union to hold an international criminal tribunal to investigate alleged human rights abuses by the Cuban government amid historic protests in the island nation. The Republicans, led by guess who one of the main ones is going to be? Guess which state they're from?
Ted Cruz. Marco Rubio,
Rick Scott, and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy include the demand in the letter sent to the Organization of American States, the EU, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And the letter says, following more than 6 decades of brutally oppressive rule, the Cuban people are risking their lives to loudly denounce the disastrous communist regime that has time and time again failed to promote and protect the general welfare of its citizens. The world must stand with them in this critically important moment. As the democratically elected leaders of the world's free countries, we write to you today to fervently implore you to take action in support of the Cuban people and their democratic aspirations. It is time to finally end the evil and murderous reign of the communist, illegitimate Cuban regime that has murdered, tortured, and oppressed for far too long. We encourage you to work with us in forming an international criminal tribunal for Cuba for crimes against humanity and work to hold the communist regime accountable. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of things here to talk about. One is the United States isn't really a fan of tribunals, international criminal court tribunals, right?
Not when they involve us.
Yeah, not when they involve us. I thought January 6th was this huge. Where did Kevin McCarthy come down on January 6th? Like he was kind of like January 6th curious. Like at the beginning, he defended
I guess so.
it.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I didn't pay close enough attention to that.
I just think I thought that was like an assault on, shouldn't we be tending to our own? What could the Cubans say about the United States? Like they could make their own tribunal against the United States, right? For various things. For Gitmo. Yeah. I mean, that's hilarious. That's Guantanamo Bay in itself.
Right.
Obviously, regardless of your position on Cuba, there's a lot of hypocrisy in this, I think.
Yeah, I'm always torn about Cuba because the people who are, the biggest and most aggressive sort of regime change proponents about this, especially the kind of the diaspora community, and they have this incredibly outsized influence on electoral politics and all that. They're so hyper aggressive about it, and they overlook a lot of things, or they're so intense about it that they can't even admit to things that are true, like the fact that there are high literacy rates in Cuba, or that their healthcare in many respects is more effective than ours, or at least reaches more people, right? Like,
a lot of these hardliners are they're the APAC. There's a real parallel between Israel and Cuba in terms of the outsized weight, or there's I don't remember what the Cuban APAC is. Right. It's almost the state of Florida, but in terms of there being a silenced majority, also a demographic shift, also a very Florida, a lot of single issue people, right? So some people will vote just on the issue of Israel, just on the issue of Cuba. That'll define them. You also have PEP, Progressive Accept on Palestine. Mm-hmm. So there should also be a PEC, Progressive Accept on Cuba. Right. Which is not as much of a thing. Sometimes it is, but it's not as if most, I'm generalizing. Here we go. Woke buttons blazing.
Well, okay, but what does progressive accept on Cuba mean? Are we saying that the Cuban government is progressive? Because I don't know that
we're saying really that they're people who have non-intervention attitudes, let's just say, towards most countries. And then when it comes to that, but that's not actually that much of a thing. That's a smaller thing. Like there, and of course the response to that would be people have various ways to they would say I'm wrong. They would say we don't get it on the left. We romanticize Cuba, whatever. Just like Jews who are or progressive except PEP of any background would say, no, you don't get it. There's anti-Semitism, so that's why. So I'm not they obviously have a coherence. I'm
not for intervention with Cuba, but the Cuban government has some issues. That it was probably worse once upon a time, but I think if you want to talk about the irony, right, with Gitmo and all that, we have systemic arbitrary detention, warrantless, all that's warrantless surveillance, all that stuff, and they have some of that too. It's not as, I think it's probably not as bad, and I think the hypocrisy in our case is a million times worse. But it's the Cuban government still has issues. I think we overstate the problems with things like academic freedom of speech there, but they do have warrantless detention. They do have arbitrary arrest. They have all these things that are not good. So it's a tricky issue for sure.
Yeah, no, but I actually think that if more people spoke about it the way you did, I guess I don't think it's really interesting. I did an interview with this guy, Reed Lindsay, and this woman, Liz Oliva Fernandez, and she's a Cuban journalist. Her thesis is that, like, of course, the government makes all these mistakes, but it's so hard to even isolate what the government's mismanagement is, given the sanctions. You know, he made a really interesting point also about police repression, because his point, it was funny. He kind of said in a not like talking point way, just kind of organically, was like, yeah, I mean, whenever police show up, there's often like there's a overuse of force, excessive force, right? People get taken away from rallies. He's like, but it's nothing like in Haiti, because he's reported from there. He's like, it's nothing like the case in Haiti, and it's certainly not like in the United States, which I just thought was a funny
right
thing to say.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm torn here. I know people who spend a lot of time in Cuba, and who work there, who have nothing but good things to say about the country, and then I also know people whose families are from there and have whose blood boils at the mention of it, and who have personal experience living there. So it's a difficult thing, but absolutely, for sure, I'm against invading. We have no business, sitting on our high horse morally about any of this stuff.
But one more thing, one more plug for Cuba. And I think the conversation is often overly simplified, but it's also hard because sometimes, like, the media discussion of it is so bad that I'm just copying to the fact that sometimes I oversimplify to push back in a way that's not as helpful as it could be, probably. But I will say one thing, when you said that it's an island, it's not just, I mean, things are very different, obviously, on islands, but they also have, one of the amazing things about this country is that, and I have been there, but I'm not pretending like I've gone on a fact-finding mission and seen it. I'm more saying that in full disclosure, like I'm someone who likes the country enough to have gone there. Their preventative medicine is really amazing. So the reason they have, like, the second you get exposed, you go, like, they have doctors. I mean, they're like PR campaigns, their medical diplomacy happens to be very good. To be like the most critical of Cuba, you could say, well, that's a great way to spread it's great PR, but it happens to be PR that, like, saves a lot of people's lives. So they go abroad and treat people. But it is a really interesting model in terms of their healthcare, because they spend a lot less money by treating things preemptively. So they created 2 vaccines for COVID. And when you get exposed to it, apparently you have to, like, go through all your contacts and tell them that you're exposed, and you're treated without even having the symptoms, I think.
No, I get it, but my reaction to this is similar. I went to college in a communist country. I was amazed that you can just walk into a doctor's office and get a scan or anything, whether you didn't have to put up tons of money, and you could just see people right away, and there was a completely different vibe about getting treated by a doctor. And I think that's consistent across a lot of socialist countries. Unbelievable education, literacy rates were incredible. And then you hear about the downside too. Like, there's when you lived in the Soviet Union, you couldn't go on a vacation anywhere without having a party member follow you around. You had to be at least in threes everywhere you went, even if you were in a communist country abroad, right? So
that's not very trusting of fellow communist countries.
Yeah, it's there was a lot of stupidity, even sort of late in the Brezhnev era and everything, which is, to me, kind of an analog to what modern Cuba is like. It's like, it's not Stalin era repression or anything like that. It's a system that's different from ours. It doesn't, it has different kinds of legal protections and that sort of thing. So, but everyone's hyper emotional about it and stupid. And obviously, the United States tendency to try to, like, get involved with every kerfuffle and push people into power that they like is the most repugnant thing in this whole picture. So
and there's also that interesting phenomenon of, like, listen to X, whatever group it is, because people love doing that. But and obviously, United States, you're going to have a certain, like, subgroup of people who are here, like, they've left that country in the first place. So a lot of people will say, like, I have an actual Venezuelan friend, I have an actual Cuban friend, and listen to Cubans or listen to Venezuelans. Like, okay, but that person may not represent, they may represent a diaspora community here or a part of it, But things are changing, just like with Jews and Israel. Things have changed. With you have people who are Cuban American who don't think that, regardless of their politics, they don't think a blockade is a good idea, and embargo is a good idea.
The blockade was always horrific. I mean, it's just totally unjustifiable, and it's amazing how uncontroversial they always are when we do that in this country, whether it was Iraq or, we just casually cut people off from sort of essential supplies and medicine and things.
And then claim to care about humanitarian causes.
Right. Yeah.
But and there's so much fake news. I know this isn't that interesting, but there's like all these people who are just posting videos of people, and some of them aren't even from Cuba. It's like you can tell from the actual physical the actual buildings or the national monuments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Yeah, the Republicans are obviously going to try to use this as a way to box Biden in, and they probably were successful in doing that last time around. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I think the Democrats reacted so violently to Bernie's comments, because they were trying to preempt comments about literacy, right? That's what he was talking about, because they were trying to get ahead of this quadrennial PR game involving Cuba that is just so tiresome.
I wonder, what's your opinion? Because this journalist, Reed Lindsay, was saying how much he thinks it's about Florida, like and he thinks it's like, do you think it actually makes sense as a move, like morality aside? Like, do you think that they have to be beholden to a certain community, or are there other ways to do, like, get out the vote in Florida?
Well, it depends. I mean, I think if you make assumptions that being virulently anti-Cuba is going to win you Miami-Dade County, that's one of those things that, this is the thing that drives me crazy about campaign journalism generally, which is that we assume that whatever was true in the previous election cycle or the previous 2 election cycles is going to be true going forward. And it's like almost never the case that you can bank on those things. And yet people will set policies for like a generation based on their impressions of a couple of districts. Look what happened with 2008 or 2012 when Obama suddenly reclaimed a whole bunch of Reagan Democrat districts. And I think the Democrats assumed, we've solved our problem with sort of working class voters, because they had this drift that happened during the 70s and 80s. And some of that was over issues like busing, where there was nothing they could really do about it. And some of it had to do with economic issues and NAFTA and that came later. Obama won back a lot of those votes, and the party just sort of assumed, okay, well, we have those districts now. They're back in the fold. So let's not worry about it. And they immediately lost them again. You know what I mean? In 2016, because voters change, people change their minds. So like on the Cuba thing, it's just like you're saying, there are new people coming in who have different attitudes about this. And it just seems like the smarter thing to do is just to do whatever you think the right thing is and not worry about what the electoral consequences are going to be.
Yeah. And also, I think people often, sometimes in good faith, and they're just wrong, and they think that they're being accurate. And then there's a more dangerous thing, which is like this technocracy, ideological technocracy, right? Which is where people actually have an agenda and an ideological commitment, and they're pretending that it's just based on the facts, just pragmatic.
Oh yeah, no, that the technocrat thing is that is so infuriating. That's such another constant of like American foreign policy is, our person is not an ideologue. He's a totally. Technocrat. He's just a problem solver. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, Jim Carville or whomever just being like, you got to win Florida. I don't know why I do that.
Right.
Which again, it is really interesting, the Israel stuff too, because people will assume that. But look at who won in Jamal Bowman beat Elliot Engel. So White Hawk down.
Conversely, Bernie did really badly in Florida, right? And it's just it's hard to say, right? Like what I would argue that if we extended Social Security protections, if we gave Medicare for all of it, that the Democrats would do a lot better in Florida. But they've decided to probably treading water in some tenuous middle ground on Cuba and beating up on Sanders and doing whatever else it is their best shot. I don't know. that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
No.
But anyway.
So I think we decided to lift the blockade. That's a good thing, regardless of your politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So isn't that weird? So this comes from the Washington Post, not normally the venue where you get this kind of thing. Super fun. A gun covered in Legos to look like a toy sets off a furor. This is another like let's figure out our verdict on what the limits of trolling should be type of story. So it goes like this. The lead is about a week ago, a company in Utah that makes custom modifications to firearms debuted what it described as a fun new product, a kit that encases Glock handguns in red, yellow, and blue Lego blocks, refashioning lethal weapons to look exactly like children's toys. Quote, "We have been building guns out of blocks for the last 30 years and wanted to flip the script to aggravate mom," Provo-based Culper Precision explained on its website. It went on to argue that personal defense is a right granted by God and that gun ownership is protected by the Constitution, before getting to the most important reason the company was selling Block 19, as the design was named, for $549 to $765, depending on the specifics. Quote, "There is a satisfaction that can only be found in the shooting sports, and this is just one small way to break the rhetoric from anti-gun folks and draw attention to the fact that the shooting sports are super fun," the site proclaimed, exuding a bravado that would prove to be short-lived. Here's the thing, guns are fun, shooting is fun, 30 rounds full auto is fun. So then, of course, the Washington Post does its sort of Debbie Downer thing. What's not fun and what went unaddressed on the sales page is the reality that thousands of children unintentionally shoot themselves or others each year. Thousands? Is that true? I don't doubt it necessarily, but that seems a little high. Okay, first of all, I would shoot myself in the head with that gun. That thing looks like a toy, right?
Yeah, this is a real thing?
Yeah, it's a real toy. It's a real gun.
Yeah, and that's a real text. It's not like this isn't from The Onion or something. The
No.
company that's making it. Yeah, I mean, remember when Tamir Rice was killed because he was playing with a toy gun that was not an actual gun, and a cop like shot him?
Right.
So this is just so disturbing. Sorry to be. I was just tooting my own levity horn. I'm gonna say this is not. So what's the outcome from this? Let's see. With the Tamir Rice thing, it was a Rice thing. It was a fake gun, a toy gun, but it looked like a real gun. Apparently, I mean, I don't know what someone confused. A cop thought it was. So with this, if we have more guns that look like fake guns, maybe less cop shootings of them, but way more shootings. Less cop shootings of children, but way more shootings in general, because you can bring in your Lego gun unsuspected.
Yeah, they even talk about this in March. Police officers in North Carolina conducting a drug raid found that a Glock with a 50-round drum magazine had been altered to look like a Nerf gun.
That's so scary. I mean, how many people could then if people already accidentally shoot with like guns that look like guns, I feel like a lot of gun enthusiasts even would be not cool with this. Am I right? Am I giving them too much credit?
I think there are probably gun enthusiasts who would not be cool with it. You know, I think probably there are some judges who probably wouldn't be cool with it too, because you can smell the liability suit coming. Again, the guys, like, if you're going to go and make a whole product like this just to piss off your critics, I'm going to get killed for saying this. I almost admire, the stick-to-itiveness to do something that extreme just to be a dick, because that's what he's doing. But unless it's just completely not funny, like,
people die. Kids
picking up a gun and shooting each other is not. I'm not sure where your head would have to be to actually find that. Well, I guess if you thought that didn't happen really all that much, you might do this just to annoy gun activists.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, pretty bad trade. Yeah, maybe.
I'm wondering what that kind of person's sense of humor is in other areas. Is this the only thing that person finds funny? Like, I would just why make this joke?
I think they have because they're like very craven assholes. Maybe I went on there. So Culper Precision is the company that's making them, right? And I just Googled them, and if you go on their website, their home is, "We here at Culper Precision are grateful for the attention that Block 19 is currently getting across the globe. We built it to create an opportunity to talk about the enjoyment of the shooting sports and the joy that can only be found in marksmanship, practice, and training. While the Second Amendment is foundationally important to the freedoms we enjoy in the United States or America as a check on the power that we, the people, grant our elected officials, and as a tool to make the weak strong in the face of those who would oppress and maim, we also recognize and built this to highlight the pure enjoyment of the shooting sports, as we feel that, like us, our customers truly deeply love the shooting sports and the inherent fun, satisfaction, and joy that comes from participation in them.
I remember I went into a gun store once in the South. It was just before election night in 2012. I forget, but they sent me to some godforsaken place to watch a whole bunch of Republicans watch losing the election. That was Rolling Stone's idea of a joke. And so I went to some town where, you know, it was very like pro-gun and everything. I went into a gun store, and at the time, you know, they were really into these targets that had like zombies, and there were all these zombie weapons were a big thing. So they had like handguns that were designed with sort of neon features to look like they were used by zombies, and then you would have, you know, like zombie type targets that you'd shoot at. And the guy was trying to explain to me that this was like a big thing, that people really got off on the fun of imagining shooting zombies, and that there was a whole industry built around that, so much so that you would spend like literally all your disposable income on a zombie gun. I guess it's a long way of saying I just I never really understood what goes on in the minds of people who get off on this shit.
I guess you don't understand inherent joy or whatever
inherent joy,
like Buddhist, like yoga-ish, like self-help shit that they're writing about guns. This is so fucking weird. So if we could just look actually at that link, Wilson, that I put in, the culperprecision.com. You know, we're trying to understand what makes this guy tick, right? Or these guys tick. And I mean, this guy, the person, the culper precision represents the man who is just like the little bitch, I would say. I think that's the type of person it is. Like, come the fuck on. It seems that no matter what we create in the firearms industry, anti-gunners seem to leverage every true innovation shortly after its release to talk about why guns are bad. We are sick of the past 30 to 40 years of slowly capitulating our rights away in the fear of what someone who hates us for exercising our Second Amendment rights thinks about us. Rather than live in fear of the loud voices on social media, we decided to release Block 19, a fucking Lego gun, in an attempt to communicate that it is okay to own a gun and not wear tactical pants every day, and that owning and shooting firearms responsibly is a really enjoyable activity.
So they made this because they were pissed about stuff on Twitter.
They were fucking triggered. Yeah.
Triggered, yeah.
So to speak. We watched last year's record numbers of new friends that were previously on the fence, or in many cases wholly misunderstood the place of firearms in modern society, go out and purchase guns. We are extremely excited for these first-time gun buyers to seek out firearms education and marksmanship training, as we know that the pure enjoyment of firearms will be found therein. What's up with like?
So those people most of those people who are new gun owners, I don't think they're the kind of people who are buying guns because it's fun. I think they're buying guns because they think the apocalypse is coming, and that they're going to have to be standing on top of their garage shooting people, in a post-apocalyptic, post-pandemic kind of scenario, right?
Notice that he does the therein. It's like the Michelle Bachmann thing. Remember when she became retarded thereafter? So we are extremely excited for these first-time gun buyers to seek out firearms. I just decided they sound Midwestern. Education and marksmanship training, as we know that the pure enjoyment of firearms will be found therein. Okay, I'm just going to return to how weirdly like namaste-ish they're trying to get. So we built Block 19 to show all those new firearm owners that guns are not just for law enforcement and current or former military, or the types that are prone to overt bravado that is so often portrayed on social media. Guns are for everyone, all caps. And we want to be the first to welcome new firearms owners from any personality type or political affiliation. If you own a firearm, you are our friend, whatever that may or may not be worth to you. If you are a human being that is alive and legally able to purchase a firearm, we built this to be a welcome and a gesture of friendship and inclusion. We believe this inclusion mindset, if adapted by all gun owners everywhere, is what helps grow the 2A community and secure our rights for the future. It is our hope that firearms are able to double not only as the great equalizer, but also hopefully soon the great unifier. And this is our small attempt to that end, making the Second Amendment too painful to tread on. What the fuck?
Well, can we first of all just sort of say I think it's probably not a rule that you want to really heavily invest in, and to say if you own a firearm you are our friend.
Yeah.
Because that could come up, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
seriously.
like the person who bursts into your home with a gun or whatever, like that person's probably not your friend.
Yeah,
I think,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
Or the person who's running naked on the streets with an AR-15 and firing in all directions, probably also not your friend.
Right.
I would think.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but you're right. The tone is a little.
It's so off. They sound like someone who definitely wouldn't pass a background check.
You're right. It's pretty bitchy. It's
like, sorry about your whatever your issues with women are.
Get off. We don't even know. I mean, this. Yeah, it's probably a guy. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, not to generalize. By the way, this is a really creepy, I'm just uploading a thingy. We could share that. This is one of their, like, stock images. I mean, I may be an actual person from that community, from that company, but look at this guy kind of has an LB expression on his face. Little bitch expression. Do you see that? Look at that. Like,
he's got a little bit of a V for Vendetta smile.
It's like shit. Again, that like weird shit-eating grin. I just imagine being like, "Hi, Kathy. How are you? Nice to see you, Kathy." I fucking hate Kathy. I don't know why that came into my head, but
who's Kathy?
I don't know. Just a random person who I feel like
you hate her.
No, well, I think he hates her.
Oh, he hates her.
I just have an image of him like going to coffee, getting something. Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Right.
And in his head being like, I hate Kathy, like with that smile on his face.
Right. I just can't wait to empty.
Yeah.
A whole magazine ammunition.
Wholesome fun, guys.
Wholesome. Okay, so that was weird. What do we have for Isn't That Terrible?
Okay, so I'm reading at Metro West Daily News. Police search for a man accused of having sex with a horse in Norfolk. The owner of a Miller Street Horse Center.
This is Massachusetts, by the way.
The owner of a Miller Street Horse Center has put out a warning to other horse farms to be on the lookout for a man who allegedly had sex with a horse at the facility on Thursday. The horse was uninjured, Turner Hill Equestrian Stables owner Hillary Swar said Friday. This man is a sexual predator, she said. The unidentified man is seen
He's not unidentified anymore.
Right. Spoiler alert, yeah. The unidentified man is seen on a security camera going into the stables at Turner Hill Equestrian around 4:30 a.m. on Thursday. The man used grain to lure several horses out of their pens and succeeded with one. Okay, then Norfolk Police Detective Samuel Webb said he was familiar with horses. The way he was able to put the reins on the horses shows he knew what he was doing. Swar said the stables have multiple security cameras, but the man had unplugged all but one. An alarm sounded to an employee of Turner Hill who saw on a video feed what was happening, but by the time everyone arrived, the man had left. Swar, the owner of the stable, said, to have someone break into your barn, pick out a horse like it's a lady lover, pull her out, and maneuver yourself in such a manner for self-gratification is beyond me.
Did he have sex with the horse, or did he just whack off to the horse?
I think there was, well, let's see, hold on. The horse was medically checked and determined to be healthy. Investigators conducted an exam similar to tests on human sexual assault victims to collect evidence, Webb said. Webb said he has sent an alert out to surrounding communities to see if they had any information or similar incidents. I was able to get some leads from that. I have some things I'm going to check out. And Webb said that the suspect, if caught, would likely be charged with sexual contact with an animal and trespassing and possibly other charges. So now the update. So that's. I mean, I think isn't that terrible in many ways.
Well, right, but then the key part of the story is the police issued the photo.
Okay, here's what happened. Ready, Matt? You asked for whether there was sex or not. He is seen on a video camera luring the horse from its stall with grain. He then stood on a stool and had sex with the animal while it ate. Okay, yeah, let's show the photo. I feel so bad. Okay, yeah, we'll just there he is on the stool. Looks like more like a stepping ladder, for being honest. And
yeah,
that was
it's like when you're in the kitchen, right? You're trying to get that top shelf.
Right. and it did show his face, but we don't need that because I actually feel very bad for him. I really feel bad for him. This is a genuine, I talk a lot about, obviously, I have very passionate stance on necrophilia. I think people probably assume I have a similar stance on bestiality. I actually think that no, there's a living thing with bestiality.
Yeah, I'm
consent issues.
Very much. Yeah, I don't really believe that a horse can consent.
Yeah.
So I have less. I feel less bad about this person, but
it is really weird though that he went and he knew where all the security cameras were but one.
I mean, also think of the jokes. I mean, he held out grain and he was to all the horses and was successful with one of them. I mean, there's a metaphor in there. So, you know what I mean? Like he talked to all the women at the bar,
right?
But,
yeah, cast a wide net. You got to cast. Yeah,
a wide net. Even using grain to a horse, his batting average is low.
Yeah, true.
That's pretty bad.
Maybe he sent out a sketchy vibe.
Right? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe other horses were trying to warn that horse.
They picked up on the fact that he was
the type of guy who had sex with horses.
He just sent out that vibe.
He sent out that, like, I'm gonna have a sex with a horse. Yeah, he didn't. I mean,
what was the giveaway? The pants at the ankles.
Yeah. Is this kind of like an age-old custom though? It doesn't make it okay. Yeah. How common is that among like shepherds and stuff like that?
I don't know.
I like the way that woman said, to have someone break into your barn, pick out a horse like it's a lady lover, pull her out and maneuver yourself in such a manner for self-gratification is beyond me. So what I kind of admire about this is that she's kind of giving the okay to break into someone's house, pick out a lady lover. Like you would really, like you'd pick out a lady lover and give her food or maneuver yourself in such a manner.
Hold it out like that.
Yeah. Is that what she's saying? There's something weirdly like, I understand what she's trying to do, and I'm sure she's very upset right now, but there's something weirdly, like unintentionally, it sounds like she's suggesting that like it's okay to do that with a lady lover.
Right.
Hold out food.
Yeah. Or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think when the horses saw, they're like, see, that's why I go out with him.
Right.
He's the type who actually does, look, he's copulating with a horse.
Right.
What kind of guy does that?
This is a person who is really not happy that the internet exists because after, forever after all this gets resolved.
I know. If you were that, I would probably get face surgery.
Yeah, he's definitely going to want to change his name, dating, getting a job interview. Although maybe dating's not a thing for him. Anyway, yeah. So our verdict on him is you feel bad for him.
I feel bad for him, but also, I mean, I feel bad for him the way I feel bad for abusers sometimes, like when they're abused themselves. I just assume there's something, people are going to be like, oh, it's just toxic masculinity. I don't actually think that. Entitlement, I don't actually think that. I think there's something happening when you seek out a horse to have sex with. I'm with the skeptical horses.
Yeah.
Who abuse his food.
Yeah. I guess I need to see some statistics on tendency toward bestiality is.
Right.
I'm assuming it's overwhelmingly a male thing, but that's just because
you're a man. Yeah, so that's terrible.
It is. It is terrible.
Yeah.
And also, it suggests that this could be happening to your horse, and you probably wouldn't know about it if the guy. Also, why did he leave the lights on?
He didn't want to creep them out, probably.
Yeah, I guess.
He didn't want to seem like a perv.
Right.
What's hard about it is that what I do find hard about this is that I wonder if there's some. Do we punish animals because we can't understand their consent? And there probably are some animals who want to have sex with people, but you can't take that chance.
No, I don't think so. No, and people do make that argument actually.
Right. Yeah. I think Cenk Uygur made it once.
Did he?
He said on TYT he'd make bestiality legal because if the animal enjoys it, which I get the principle of. I just don't know how we can. Which, as you can imagine, his enemies.
I'm not going to go anywhere near that.
Yeah, use a lot.
I think the likelihood that there are a lot of animals who want to have sex with people is low. Like if I were an animal, I think a human being would be pretty low on the list of animals that I would want to have sex with. Like if you're a dolphin, do you want to have sex with a person?
As opposed to another dolphin? Or I feel like you're suggesting
as opposed to anything that isn't like
an asshole,
hairy in some places and not
right.
the rest everywhere. Right. You know what I mean? Like people are just not very impressive as animals go.
Right.
You'd have to be a really shitty animal to want to have sex with with a person, you
like
know,
a real perv.
No, like a really kind of like skeevy, unimpressive animal, like a ferret or something like that.
Oh yeah, I bet ferrets probably do on that. No, well, the nice thing about the horse thing though, I gotta say, is that it's like much more, if you're gonna, it's a more humane size. That I'll give him that much.
Right, as opposed to like a chicken.
Yes.
Right.
Like that's just murder.
Right, or at least really unpleasant. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a different level. That brings it to a whole other level. So as a bestial, what do you call the person who engages in bestiality?
Actually, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that.
So this bestialist, I almost feel like, is a model, exemplary bestialist. Because if you're going to be a bestialist, which I don't think you should be, just from, maybe that's the thing we should be urging people to do from a harm reduction standpoint.
I think it's a zoophile.
Zoophile?
Animal sex porn tube.
Oh my God.
Oh God. Oh, okay.
Oh, don't even.
Yeah, okay. All right.
You got that from looking up zoophile?
Yeah, that's the first result on.
Why is that good? Why can't there be like I mean, I hope it doesn't give you a warning. See, that's where I want the internet to be. What's the word?
Dude, don't click on this.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Anyway, I'm anti-bestiality. If you're going to have to do it, make sure the animal's a lot bigger than you. That's all I'm going to say. It's kind of like people who are against premarital sex, but if you're going to do it, wear a condom. But those people don't actually exist that much, right? At all.
So your standard is make sure the animal's bigger than you.
Yeah. Don't do it. But if you find yourself at a farm,
right,
and there are multiple options. First
of
all,
look for the bigger animal.
Yeah.
All right. So don't make a gun. Don't buy a gun that looks like Legos. And if you're gonna have, don't make a gun that looks like Legos. And if you're gonna have sex with an animal, make it a big one.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna talk in a minute to Jordan Sheridan and Jen Dees of Status Coup, who have a new story out that's actually in The Intercept. And it's involving Flint, and they've been working on this for a while. And we also want to talk to Jordan separately because he was involved in a very interesting, actually an extremely interesting censorship case earlier this year, and it's actually an ongoing thing that I think a lot of people don't know about, and it's relevant in the context of these sort of new discussions about Facebook. So we're going to talk about both of those things. Let's talk to Jordan and Jen.
Yeah.
Welcome to Useful Idiots. Jordan and Jen, you have a big story out today. Could you sort of just summarize, well, first tell people where they can find it, because it's in a couple of places, and then also just sort of summarize what it is. I know you've been working on this for a long time.
Yeah, so to find the article, it's been published and co-published by the Detroit Metro Times and by The Intercept. And so we made an easy link so you can find it, statuscoup.pub/Flint Water Coverup.
And to really boil it down for the low attention span world we live in, I try to under promise and over deliver, but I feel very strongly that what we've discovered and reported is, to me, the biggest government cover-up of this century so far. In a nutshell, we found that former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder's administration, his top officials, deleted their phones soon before a criminal investigation was launched into the Flint Water crisis. His press secretary, her phone was completely wiped when she left her job right before the criminal investigation. We also found that top officials in the Michigan Health Department, their phones mysteriously had no messages on them for all of 2014 through October 2015, which was the 18-month period Flint used the Flint River. Top officials, the messages that came up when prosecutors got their phones started after October 2015. We also learned that the Governor Snyder himself basically waged an all-out war on prosecutors. He would not hand over pretty much the most important Flint documents, including his daily briefings, environmental department briefings, many other documents. It got to the point where the special counsel, kind of like the Robert Mueller of Flint, they had a special counsel. He filed several motions to compel Snyder to cooperate, but Snyder didn't cooperate. And for different reasons, I won't go into the weeds, the special prosecutor's hands were kind of tied because the Attorney General of Michigan at that time was a Republican who was running to replace Snyder. So he kind of had a conflict of interest. But in a nutshell, we have potentially erased evidence, altered evidence, the governor during the criminal investigation refusing to cooperate. We also found some other things, including the governor's top lieutenant, kind of like, I don't know if it was Rahm Emanuel for Obama. That kind of person interfered with the investigation, tried to influence the testimony of Snyder administration officials, and in one cartoonish text message that we obtained, warned other officials not to put anything in writing because emails are cannons for our enemies.
Emails are cannons for our enemies.
Yes.
Okay.
Water cannons.
Yeah.
And
poison water cannons apparently.
Yeah.
And there's also reporting in there about phone calls in October of 2014, which I believe you're saying suggests that Snyder knew about the issues with the water, 16 or 18 months before he's so far admitted? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so that was from January. We had the misfortune of publishing that at The Intercept on the day Trump got impeached for a second time, so it kind of got lost. But for that one, which is connected to this story, basically Governor Snyder told Congress he didn't know about this deadly bacteria that killed a lot of people, made a lot of people sick, until January 2016, which is when the media started covering Flint. Prosecutors concluded that he knew about it 16 months earlier, while the deadly bacteria was spreading. And just a few weeks before the governor's reelection in November 2014, we got his phone calls between him, his chief of staff, and the health department director. It was rapid fire calls over 2 days. Prosecutors kind of mapped out how often did these people speak. Most of them didn't speak at all before those 2 days. And the phone calls and the fact that the governor never directly talked to his health director. The chief of staff was kind of the cutout. The governor would call the chief of staff. The chief of staff would call the health director. Then the health director, the chief of staff would call back the governor. That basically Snyder was using his chief of staff as a cutout, so there was no trail of him directly talking to the health director. But prosecutors concluded they were discussing and trying to stop news of the Legionella outbreak from going public. In that story, we also found notes from an environmental department meeting that mentioned governor's briefings, presumably briefings that went to Snyder in October 2014 that had mention of the Legionella outbreak. So essentially, I think perjury is still a crime. Snyder, according to the prosecutors, perjured himself to Congress, which Congress has not called him back for.
Yeah, so I think to kind of break that down for people who maybe haven't followed as closely in the audience is you always talk about like, what did they know and when did they know it, all through history when trying to nail down corrupt people, right? So that this is very much a case of that. And when you look at the timeline of things for the story we published in January, which is what Jordan was just describing, there were key times where there was just a flurry of activity all of a sudden that directly points to them knowing, and especially Snyder knowing far, many months before he admitted to knowing such. And unfortunately, this was something that Congressman Elijah Cummings was kind of going to follow up on. And now we unfortunately can't have that. Hopefully someone else follows up on these timelines. But there's also for this current story, here we have again a different kind of flurry of activity surrounding phones. But this time the phones it's a different case because these are wiped phones during crucial times in this timeline that prosecutors were looking at.
So is there an obstruction of justice issue with this, or what's the criminal potential criminal implications?
So that is a really important question, and I'm going to try to just make this as palatable for your audience. So there was the original Flint investigation was under a Republican attorney general, and he hired a special prosecutor. When current Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel took over in January 2019, she cleaned house. So she fired the special prosecutor, most of his team, and then restarted the investigation. There's a lot of elements about that didn't make sense, including why you would fire everybody, which, that is the team that just over 3 years had successfully charged 15 state officials. But the previous investigation, our reporting indicated, had found evidence to charge Governor Snyder with misconduct in office, willful neglect of duty, and was not ready to charge him, but were building a case against him towards involuntary manslaughter. The Attorney General Nessel's prosecution charged the governor in January, the former governor, with a misdemeanor. So it was done in a very secretive process. Basically, the revamped investigation number 2, they went through a one-man grand jury, which basically is a judge as the jury, deciding if there's enough evidence to charge and what to charge officials for. That's a very secretive process. It's rarely used in Michigan or most states. So we don't know what evidence the current attorney general and her prosecutors presented to this judge. We have no idea if they presented any of what we just reported, because most people in Flint and elsewhere I think the common question would be, how does the governor not know that his top officials are destroying evidence, that his top lieutenant, his top advisor is interfering with the investigation? How is this only a misdemeanor of neglect of duty? So the previous investigation was investigating obstruction of justice, was going to charge him with misconduct in office, which this current attorney general did not charge him with. And we're building a case towards involuntary manslaughter. And that has been backed up by 2 other Michigan reporters who, through their sources, backed up our reporting that the original investigation was building a case against Snyder for involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, so they were building to piggyback off of that. They were building up this case and kind of building toward something bigger, and then suddenly they were all let go by this, Democrats in office, who some folks thought, okay, this will be better. Things will really happen now. Gretchen Whitmer's in office, and she gets to pick her AG and all this. Like, it might be better. Well, then the former team that had spent all these years, 3 years, looking into this deeply and building this case, they were all kicked off. Then the way things have shaken out now, Snyder has a hand slap. He's up for maybe $1,000 fine. It's like the equivalent of a parking ticket for all that he is allegedly done.
Potentially 1 year in jail.
Yeah, potentially 1 year in jail. We'll see. I doubt it. But yeah, so the things that he's charged with come nowhere close to potentially what could have been.
Just about the most recent story. So when I read through this, obviously I see that there are all these characters like Dr. Eden Wells, Patricia McCain. They all have small numbers of text messages, like either before a certain time or at a certain time. Do they know whether those messages were deleted or whether there's just, can they prove it one way or the other, whether they were wiping things out or whether they just weren't using that phone or what was going on?
So in some cases, like with Sarah Werfel, who was the press secretary of Governor Snyder during, 2014, 2015, she said, I turned in my phone when I left and it was wiped. I don't recall if it was, if anything happened to it before then. So we don't know what kind of messages. She also, correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, said that she didn't know if there was an iCloud backup. So she kind of, seems like she kind of danced around things a bit there in her investigative subpoena transcript, which we obtained. And so we don't know exactly what was there, but in all of these cases, there were things that should have been there. I mean, if you're working for the state, you're going to have messages to someone. You're going to be talking to your team. You're going to be talking to your boss or your subordinates, whoever. There are going to be messages there. So the fact that these phones were wiped, multiple phones were wiped, a pile of phones and devices were found, wiped. It's very suspicious.
And I'll add to that because there's multiple things. Number one, there is government retention schedules for data. So the governor's office, if an official left, their phone was supposed to be held intact for at least a year. And if there was any thought of looming investigations or litigation, which there certainly was. Flint was a national scandal by the time Snyder's press secretary left. It's supposed to be held indefinitely. So government policies and protocols were violated. The other element is we do have evidence that soon after Governor Snyder, this is what, I know this is a couple of years ago, soon after Governor Snyder in October 2015 kind of finally it acknowledged that Flint's water was toxic and that Flint was going to stop using the Flint River. We do know from documents we obtained that the deputy director of the state environmental department, he was asked for his phone, to hand it his phone, like very soon after Snyder's announcement. And he told prosecutors, I don't know what they did with it. I don't know where they took it. And he wasn't giving it back. We also know that another state environmental official, soon after Governor Snyder's announcement, he was given a new phone and a new number, which we were told from current and former state officials. It's not unusual to get a new phone. If it's an upgrade, it is unusual to get a new number. And just so people just to bring it to today, this is kind of like, imagine, the media is obviously fixated on January 6th. This is kind of like, imagine if the people who stormed the Capitol, like if all of their phones were erased, so prosecutors couldn't investigate what were the communications leading up to that, who was involved. It's kind of similar. Like Flint residents were complaining and the media was grabbing onto their complaints well before these messages were deleted. So at the time, the period that there are no messages or phones were erased, it's not like the Snyder administration didn't know those complaints. They met with Flint residents. So presumably there would be communications that investigators would naturally want to look at, again, to answer who knew what when. So in some cases, we do know that the phones were completely erased with potentially no iCloud backups. We spoke with people, I don't want to get into sources, but that we're very familiar with the criminal investigation, who said it was across the board. They were getting phones from the environmental department, the governor's office, the health department, the Department of Technology Management and Budget, that were basically wiped, meaning some of them still worked, but there was no message history. There was no phone log history. So it's kind of, it kind of reeks of, why would the Republican governor's administration that is under serious heat for this water crisis, why would they basically wipe their phones, delete messages? We still don't know. And to be clear, I mean, nobody had an explanation for us. Actually, the health department basically said, like, no, we don't care to comment. None of our reporting is being challenged, and we haven't been given a plausible explanation. Where are these messages? Why were these phones deleted? And in terms of Governor Snyder, it's not the main point of the story, but if he truly is innocent and didn't commit crimes, why did he refuse to hand over documents for 3 years to criminal investigators?
Well, I was just going to say that we could maybe get Hillary Clinton on the case, because remember, she really wanted to review the text messages between Donald Trump and Putin on January 6th, since you brought up January 6th. Yeah. Maybe we can get her to rally.
Well, that goes into a broader, and quick plug for Matt's book, Hate Inc. It kind of goes into a broader explanation. I mean, Jen and I honestly will write a book or do a documentary on the media's total abdication of duty on this story, and it really is directed to Trump. I mean, when Flint hit the fan and the media swarmed Flint for 2 weeks and then left, that was the same time that the Trump reality show had taken had hijacked the media in 2016. And between Jen and I, we've been to Flint over 20 times since 2016. And to a person, every resident will tell you, we can't get the local media to cover this. The national media only reaches out on anniversaries. I mean, if you're like a journalist, this is the story of a lifetime. There's onions and onions of Coverup and
layers
corruption.
Of onions.
Layers of onions.
So many layers, though. It's multiple. It's multiple
Right.
onions at this point. That's
And also,
layers.
by the way,
So many onions.
I've always said it's not just about Flint, Michigan, or Michigan. This kind of stuff, water privatization, which was really the underbelly that led to the water crisis. They were trying to privatize the water in Michigan, and they used the city of Flint as a guinea pig. That's going on all over the country. Bonds, there was bond fraud, which I won't get into the weeds, that led to Flint being on the Flint River. There's Matt has covered. There's shady bond activity going on all over the country. There was significant big banks, including Wells Fargo and JP Morgan, that underwrote the bonds that were related to Flint using the Flint River. So there's a whole lot of layers to this. That's not just Flint, but we've gotten from editors. Literally, I met with a Detroit Free Press editor in a parking lot in Michigan at the height of the pandemic, strolled in with a very nice Beamer. I literally handed him what we had. He told me, yeah, we really regret not doing more on Flint. And I told him, well, here's your opportunity. And he basically said to me, well, this is kind of like anecdotal. We don't know what was on the phone, this and that. He basically said, this is anecdotal. And, we don't have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I said, yeah, we're not criminal prosecutors. Most journalism is building through sources, documents, but here are the documents. It's not my opinion. The prosecutors are concluding these things, and they wouldn't run it. And we found that with many, many outlets.
Well, we know you have a busy day, so thanks
thank
so
you
much,
so much.
Jen and Jordan, for coming on, and
Thank
good
you,
luck with
guys.
this story. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And by the way, you could read the story in the Intercept and Detroit Metro Times.
Excellent. Thanks so much, both of you.
Thank
Really appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
That was great. Really
Yeah.
important work that they do at statuscoup.com. Again, that's statuscoup.com.
Statuscoup.com.
COUP.
Right. Status coup.
Coop.
Their story is this whole thing with Flint is kind of a parable about what's messed up with media, because it's an example of exactly what the press is supposed to be for. Like, you literally need to read when your water is poisonous and when putting your kids in a bath might kill them. Like, that's kind of like exactly what you need the press for. But there's no mechanism to reliably get that news out to you, because local news is being crushed from 50 different directions. B, even if it exists, it doesn't pay. And then C, even if somebody like Jordan and people like Jordan and Jen are doing this story, they have to deal with all kinds of shit now in this other landscape where we're operating within, Substack, YouTube, and all these different carriers. They got to negotiate all that just to get these stories out, and they have to make basically an unfinancial decision in order to cover that stuff.
Right.
So it's a mess. The whole thing's a mess.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really is so dark and sordid that it's like you don't have to just deal with this corruption and just like murderous corruption, but then you have to deal with the media being totally negligent, enabling it. And really, I mean, not to be too dramatic about it, but there really is a lot of blood on people's hands. Yeah,
right. I mean, like you have to do this story. I mean, definitely the people in Michigan have to do the story, like the people, those communities. But nationally, it's a big story, because as we talked about with Aaron Brockovich, this is like a thing all over the country. It's like, whether it's lead or hexavalent, whatever, those chemicals that she's famous for uncovering, whether it's that water that's just unclean and has various bacteria in it. This is a problem in communities all over the country, and you basically won't know about it unless somebody's covering these localities. That's a big if, because most of the local news organizations have been stripped to the bone, if they even still exist at all. Right. So it's a disaster.
That That Obama footage, I
that's
somehow
bad.
missed it until it was in Michael Moore's documentary.
Yeah, me too.
And which Fahrenheit 11/9. I swear, that was like one of those moments where one of those really Obama moments that I should have gotten over, like the first really Obama moment, but he just like shilled for Rick Snyder, right? I mean, he shilled for everyone who was saying the water was okay. He drank out of the water and said that, and barely though, he like lifted it to his lips. He literally said, like, can I have to get some water? Like he asked for water. It was so over the top. Sorry, I know you know. I'm just telling, well, two things. One is it's just my general rhetorical outrage, for which I apologize because it's probably very time consuming and annoying, but also just to catch up everyone watching. But he literally asked for some water, drank it, and then he talked about how he probably as a kid ate some lead chips.
Right. And look at how smart I turned out to be. You know, like that's the subtext of what he's saying.
I mean,
yeah, like when you watch that video in hindsight, it's really tough to work out like what kind of person Barack Obama is, right? Because
a really bad one.
The impression that I always got of him was that he was super smart, calculating, you know, but sort of very eloquent, very smart, understood exactly what was going on politically, was, I thought, brilliant in 2008 navigating how to win all those votes. There was, you know, he was dealing with a lot of different things and he was really good at it. But then, you know, you start to get into these questions of, well, why didn't he go after Wall Street? Why is he doing, you know, the drone thing? Why is he doing this and that? It's not until you see that water footage though that you start to think maybe this is like actually an evil person, like maybe there's something, you know what I mean?
Like, it's really really scary.
And unless he's got a better explanation, you know.
Yeah, like if there was something totally Machiavellian we don't know about it, and he got, you know, a bunch of people's water tested because of that, which I really doubt. But yeah, and it's not like we think that other politicians don't do this. It's just like they're stupidly every now and then I think that the hope, the expectation, the fantasy that maybe he's not as bad as other people.
Well, that was his entire brand.
Right.
Because he was so unspecific about policy that almost everything that you were going that you're voting for with like he would do things that were sort of gestures that suggested that he was different, like, oh no, I'll talk to Cuba, I'll talk to Syria, like I don't have it, I'm not opposed to opening a dialogue. So that was, it was a big departure, right? But you know, things turned out to be totally different when he was in office. So who knows? Never trust a politician, I guess.
I guess not, right? Gotta hold them accountable. You know, there's like a whole big debate, obviously, now about Medicare for all and this march that's happening on Saturday, M4A. And it's funny because you get people who, you know, going, we need a shorthand for that media war, for the Jimmy versus Cenk. So what can we call it though for now? We need two totally random team mascots.
It's sort of like Alien versus Predator, right? Yeah. So it's like AVP.
One side is I think can be overly critical of how bad politicians are and can like overly personalize it. And I think it can actually backfire, because I think sometimes when people really attack an individual politician, it can make people who are willing to be critical of that politician protective. You know what I mean? Because they see them focused on and with a lot of ire. But then at the same time, on the other side, there's this idea that like all we have to do is get these elected people into office, just get them because they're good on these issues. We need them in office. And that is just like the idea
that not even that they're good, that they're less bad.
Yeah, that they're less bad. Yeah. And like that, the only people who you can ever think about politics that way with it's kind of Bernie Sanders. And even then it's not appropriate, as I learned the hard way. But it's clear, it's just like, we can't rely on people's goodwill. It's not about that. Politicians only make decisions out of fear, like out of carrot. No. What is it? The carrot and
carrot and the stick. It's the stick they're worried about. Yeah.
I mean, that is really how it works. Then you can offer some positive reinforcement, but
no, I mean, there's other things like Barack Obama wanted a legacy bill to pass. He wanted to pass Obamacare because he wanted to be able to say he passed a major piece of a historic piece of legislation, right? It's the same way that JFK wanted a war that he said that he could say he won. And, you know, the politicians do have ambitions that they try to fulfill, right? But so they're not always fleeing the whip. There are things that they're trying to accomplish. They're not always positive, but yeah, you're right. Like they're much more receptive to how fucked will I be if this happens? How much trouble will I be if this piece of news gets out? Or like how many mistresses can I have before it gets publicized or whatever? Right? Crazy. Anyway, crazy story, but interesting. And congratulations to them. And
everyone go to their website.
So we're going to do Monday morning next week?
Oh yeah, and everyone check out our Monday morning broadcast, which is MONDAYMOURNING. We have it up still. You can watch it live at I want 10 a.m., but the Mats want 9 a.m. because they're normal people, not nocturnal.
We'll make it 10.
All right.
We can make it 10.
I think maybe our viewers would appreciate that too. I guess maybe because honestly, we can ask them, and if it's not 10, we'll do it anyway. Yeah, they. No, it's they. They it's one person, but it happens to be they. Yeah. So make sure you go to youtube.com/usefulidiots, usefulidiots.substack.com. That's where you can find bonus content. Make sure you go there. Honestly, our thing with Ross Barkin and Diana Morales is amazing. We'll be releasing a little snippet of it so you guys don't have to take our word for it. But you get all this great extended interviews, bonus content. For this week, it'll be a really interesting chat about YouTube censorship with Status Quo people, with Jordan and Jen. Yeah, you just want to do that for yourself. Like, it's not only to support us, it's just you don't want to deprive yourself.
Personal enrichment.
Yeah, personal enrichment. Yeah.
All right. I think that pretty much concludes this week's business. So we will see you next week. And awesome. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello. Thank you so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For full episodes and extended interviews, please subscribe at usefulidiots.substack.com. You can subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/usefulidiots for clips, live streams, and full episodes. Also, subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast. Follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod and use the hashtag UsefulIdiotsPod. Join us Mondays at 10 a.m. for the Useful Idiots Monday Morning Show, where we discuss the Sunday morning news shows so you don't have to watch them.